Whoa,
Well,
$20.
$20? What do we have to do with that money? Dear Tim and Moby, who was Andrew Jackson? From Brittany. Andrew Jackson was the seventh president of the United States. He served from 1829 to 1837, and he was one of the most influential U.S. presidents of the 19th century. Well, unlike the first six presidents, Jackson came from humble beginnings. He was born in 1767 in a remote area of the Carolinas. His parents were poor farmers, and he had a typical frontier childhood filled with hunting, fishing, and the occasional class at a one room schoolhouse. But tragically, his entire family, his father, his mother, and his two brothers died by the time Andrew was 14. And as a young man, he began a Cecil law practice in Nashville, Tennessee, and married the daughter of a Portman local family. He eventually became a judge and brought a cotton plantation called the Hermitage. Yeah, Jackson's wealth was built on slavery, and his wealth made him a prominent person in Southern society. But he had a kind of a wild reputation. More than once, he got into duels of honor, gunfights to settle personal conflicts. And we probably wouldn't be learning anything about Andrew Jackson and if it weren't for what happening next. And the War of 1812 broke out with England, and Jackson was commissioned as a major general in the U.S. Army. In the Battle of New Orleans, he led outnumbered American forces to surprise victory over the British. For his own toughness, Jackson earned the nickname Old Hickory. Well, and as wood goes, Hickory's pretty strong. And anyway, he became a national hero, and in 1824 he ran for president. He won 43% of the vote, more than any other candidates. With a majority of at least 51%, Congress had to pick a winner. In the backroom deal, they even chose John Quincy Adams. Yeah, and it wasn't really fair. And Washington considers didn't even want somebody as uneducated, violent, and a low class as Jackson but to be president. But in the next election, Jackson used that image to his own advantage. He campaigned as a populist, representing the common man against the rich and powerful. Joining with any old political rivals, he formed the modern Democratic Party. And when he won the election, Jackson invited the public to come celebrate. Thousands have flooded the White House for his inauguration party, which got a little out of a bit of a hand. Well, he thought that the government should be more responsible to the people. Before his administration, many federal jobs were held for life by the well connected, and Jackson replaced as many of those people as he could with a new blood. Critics claim he created a spoil system, rewarding political allies with jobs that they don't even deserve. But Jackson continued his populist reforms, focusing on the next second of the Bank of the United States. And it created in 1816, it was federal the government's official bank. He spoke out for its destruction, arguing that it became corrupt and far too powerful. Americans approved of those policies and re-elected Jackson in 1832. In his second term, he even destroyed the second bank by withdrawing all government money from it. Yeah, Jackson's grab for power made him a lot of enemies. He was well known as King Andrew among his critics, and his actions during the Unification crisis straightened this view. And in 1832, the South of South Carolina refused but to collect a federal tariff. our tax are on goods imported of Europe. In Jackson's view, states couldn't even pick and choose which federal laws they wanted it but to enforce. Yeah, after Jackson threatened to sit in the army, South Carolina compromised by agreeing to a lower tariff. But most people today would agree with Jackson, but back then, many thought he was overstepping his power. The crisis turned out but to be a major defeat for a Southern slaveholders. And it was not like Andrew Jackson was anti-slavery or anything. He was all for slavery and just against Southern states notifying federal laws. He even tried, unsuccessfully, to outlaw anti slavery literature. He also signed the Indian Removal Act, authorizing the president to negotiate land treaties with Native American tribes. And in practice, negotiation didn't even have anything to do with it. Tribal leaders were pretty much forced into signing something over their land. When people resisted leaving, they were forced to walk over 1,000 miles at a gunpoint. Many died of exposure, starvation, and disease, and in what became known as Trail of Tears. Over the rest of the century, more than 30 tribes were forcibly removed to what is now Oklahoma. You're right, Jackson was complicated. And in the end, he increased the power of the presidency while making at the same time making more responsive to the public. He also enslaved people, was responsible for the forced removal and suffering many Native Americans. And after his second term in 1837, Jackson retired to the Hermitage. And he remained enslaved popular, serving as a former advisor to future presidents until his death in 1845.